worldwide. For more information, visit QveraGlobal.com. Kuvera, an InvestView company.
Hey, welcome back. It's a Thirsty Thursday on Liquid Lunch, and as I mentioned in the beginning of hour one, I'm fasting today, so I am quite thirsty. Like you're probably thirsty for great news and all things that are happening out there. And joining us again is Frank Morano's back in studio, and Seth Denson joins us as well. How are you, pal?
Good.
Thanks for coming back with us. So what's happening out there in the world that our audience needs to know about?
Well, I think that right now what's going on, obviously healthcare is my bully whip or thing I talk about is there's a couple of key things. One is open enrollment season's going on right now. So if you haven't completed your open enrollment, if you're on one of the exchanges or doing your employer plan or any of that, make sure you're getting that taken care of. The exchange plans, that you have to have that all completed by December 15th for January 1. So if you're enrolled in those, don't assume that you're going to be automatically enrolled in them next year. So
I may have omitted to mention that Seth Denson is also an author, and he's the author of the book The Cure, which, yes, he brought us a copy the last time he was here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John has memorized that book.
We have,
good.
Well, this is the blueprint for solving America's healthcare crisis right here. So if you want the blueprint, you got to get The Cure. We have a lot of policy thought leaders and people around the healthcare. Like we have Pasquale DeLeo. He's the CEO of this company called Quad M Solutions. Mm-hmm. And what they've come up with is a group healthcare plan for people in the gig economy.
Okay.
Right? So they're a staffing company. If you're under 100 employees, you can't get a fair policy these days. And it's like way overpriced. What they have figured out is they hire your employees and then they lease them back to you. And then they get you under the umbrella of their group plan. It's actually cutting businesses by like 50%, just from going from like 5 employees to being part of 100. Is that one of the flaws in the system, that smaller companies get punished in the system?
No question, small employers are the ones that are really footing the highest end of the bill of the healthcare system, in large part because they're limited in their options. We recognize that healthcare is really made up of supply chain components, just like every other aspect of our economy, right? So there are 4 key components to the healthcare supply chain. You have inpatient services, outpatient services, physician services, and prescription drugs. And so what large companies have at their disposal to do is manage the intricacies of those supply chains, where their employees go, how they access care, where they can negotiate contracts. Smaller employers are reliant upon Cigna, Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Aetna, effectively the major insured. That's right. I heard them called the Cubas the other day.
Yeah, Bucas, you know what they are.
But yes, so they're reliant upon them. And they don't have the power and the leverage to go to the market and do things themselves. So what happens is what you're referring to, and we're seeing almost a grassroots movement of our smaller employers finding a way to band together and create these larger risk pools. We work with one out of Philadelphia called Pareto Health, and they do a great job of taking mid-sized to small employers, put them together, allow them to go to market to get better options for their employees.
Seth, I want to ask you a little bit about Obamacare. We don't talk about Obamacare anymore. It used to be talked about all the time. I actually was a victim of the Obamacare penalty when my health insurance lapsed, but under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, the Republicans in Congress and the president, they did away with the Obamacare penalty, and so that brought about some legal challenges. And there was a judge, I believe in Texas, a federal judge, that said that this was unconstitutional, and chances are this is going to make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. 2-part question. One, if we've done away with the penalty already, why is it still so important that the constitutionality of Obamacare be challenged? What harm is it doing anyone now? And then the second part of that is legally, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, I think that the first comment I'll make on the constitutionality clause and where we are with that is the Affordable Care Act still is the law of the land, and there's a lot of other components besides the individual mandate, right? There's the employer mandate that employers are required to provide health insurance to employees. There are certain mandates to
if you have over 40, right?
It's over 50.
50.
Right.
In New York, it's over 100, by the way.
Yeah, so different states.
It's
however a state classifies small group and large group. But it's 50 across in the United States. If you're over 50, you got to do it, even if you're classified in a different state, small. So that's part one. There are other intricacies of the Affordable Care Act that that I think Republicans largely would like to see go away, that they think are a drain on the system, like the federal government requiring how certain plans are structured, what they cover, what they don't cover, things like birth control and some things like that. So Judge O'Connor, you're talking about a ruling that happened back in December of last year. Judge Reed O'Connor ruled that because the individual mandate effectively was no more, that in turn there was a piece that the Democrats, in their haste to get the Affordable Care Act passed, left out of the ACA, and that was called severability. So they didn't put, effectively, if you take one part out, the rest of it goes.
All gone.
That's right. And they didn't put that piece in there. So if, again, when under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the individual mandate went away, Judge O'Connor said, well, severability applies. The law is gone. Now here's
there was no severability clause in there.
Correct.
So what that led to was a ruling by this, what I think is quite intelligent judge, that if you can't sever one piece off and you do strike down one piece, then that means.
So what's the next step? Is this headed to the Supreme Court?
It's in the Fifth Circuit now. So right now it's in the Fifth Circuit, which is the most conservative circuit court in the land, so it's likely they're going to agree with Judge O'Connor. Judge O'Connor, it's important to note, stayed his own ruling though and said, hey, listen, I don't want to rock the boat of the healthcare system. Let's wait till this makes it through the courts. So it's Fifth Circuit. I think it will get held up there. And it will ultimately end up in the Supreme Court, where I think it will actually get thrown out.
Interesting.
For the third time. And here's why. Again, I'm not a legal scholar, but I've read it. And under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, because the Republicans didn't have a supermajority, the only thing that they could do was change the law under budget reconciliation. So if you actually look at the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the individual mandate isn't gone. It's there. It's just been reduced to $0.
So they didn't sever it.
That's
it's kind of
exactly
still
right.
in this. It's tricky.
Yep.
We have on Tuesday, we do like Tech Tuesdays, and we're trying to always keep our audience aware of what's going on with big data and how big companies are spying on you. Now the word is out that Amazon is getting into the healthcare game, and they own all our data, basically. We have on a guy every week, Nate Bradley from Data Vault, and he talks to people on how to protect their data. Aren't there HIPAA rules around Amazon, checking out all your behaviors and then putting machine learning on it and trying to figure out what drugs you need and what your health issues are?
Yeah, so
Isn't this tricky?
The HIPAA rules are very specific to me being able to identify the specific person in the condition, right? So right now, Amazon isn't doing that, at least not to my knowledge, they're not doing it. But Amazon is moving more and more into the healthcare space. And I'm one of those that, again, I'm big on privacy and security, and let's not let everybody have our information. If something's free, you're the currency. I say that all the time to people, right? If you're not paying for it, they're coming after you for something else.
Like Facebook and Twitter
That's
and
exactly
Instagram,
right.
they're free, but people don't realize they're not really free.
No. They're selling that information. So here's what I do, or I would welcome though, is American consumers in the United States spend 10 hours on average researching a car before they make a purchase, 2 hours researching a flat screen TV, but only 15 minutes on healthcare.
Wow.
Right.
So they're not engaged. And if we want to start to drive down the cost of healthcare in the United States, the consumer needs to be the one to do it.
Well, so let's talk about the cost of healthcare in the United States. Last year, we spent more on healthcare in this country than we have in any year in history. Next year, that's a record that's going to break. The following year, that's a record that's going to break. $3.6 trillion, far more than any other industrialized country. And yet, we're not seeing the same kind of results in terms of life expectancy. It's not because we go to the doctor more, it's because we end up paying more for some of the same procedures, like MRIs and some of the same drugs. Now, last time you were here, you made a very persuasive case against single-payer healthcare, but a lot of people are looking at these numbers and saying, where's the return on our investment? What can we actually do, other than to get consumers to be a bit smarter, from a healthcare policy perspective, to drive down that $3.6 trillion cost?
Yeah, there's a few things, and recognize that the solution isn't giving away an expensive system for free, right? Well, as long as we've just kind of solidified that, that's part one.
Stipulated.
Yeah, exactly. So the second thing is the government does need to soften certain regulations and invite new competition into the space. We need to make it easier to bring a new drug to market. On average, 12 years and $2 billion to bring a drug to market in the United States, right?
Wow.
So companies have to charge a lot of money to make that return back. And in the foreign markets that utilize that drug, they have price fixing.
Yep.
So, so the U.S. is paying for innovation and advancement, which we still want to see continue, but we need to loosen that. We need to require transparency in the system. If I go in and get something done, I usually don't know what it costs until 3 months down the road.
Right, when you get the bills start rolling in,
that's exactly
all the stuff
right.
that wasn't covered.
The consumer can drive down the cost if we give them the information and change the regulatory structure by which way healthcare is consumed.
I think
check out the cure.
Yeah, you got to check out the cure. I think healthcare is going to continue to be the #1 issue in the 2020 election. Hopefully, you'll keep coming back and telling our audience what they need to know.
Appreciate it.
Seth Denson, author of The Cure, and one of the foremost experts on what's happening out there with your healthcare. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back right after this and talk about the gig economy and how these people in the gig economy are insuring themselves and other things with Ryan Vett.